great. That's great. So first of all, welcome everybody to our, is this our third virtual open mic or second? Thank you, Jonathan, second. So that shows my age. So our second open mic, this is sponsored by the Pat Conroy Literary Center and as well as the South Carolina Writers Association. And we have Phil Spillane visiting us all the way from Ireland. So we're international open mic this evening. I would ask as a courtesy, if you don't mind, please mute yourself when you're not the reader, and that'll just help for background noise. And we've got quite a nice lineup this evening. I tried to list the genre, and if you want to do a quick thing about an intro for what your piece is, that would be terrific. We have a 3-minute timeline for your reading. That's because we've got a lot of readers. So let me get my timer set if you guys don't mind. So 3 minutes, and what happens is I'll unmute, and you might hear a little music, and you'll know, you can hear it, and you'll know that basically your time is up. If you go up a little bit over, it's nobody's going to take the hook and take you off of Zoom, so don't worry, we'll just keep going. You're not going to get hooked off of Zoom. So I'm waiting on Mac, but I don't see him yet, Jane. So I'll come back to him, that's for sure. And welcome, Pam. Your daughter is here, and just so you, yep, she's online, and I'm getting the chat. I may need to increase the volume. So is that better, Jackie? I just increased my volume a little bit. Did that help?
I can. Vivian, I don't. Trying to help Estelle. Estelle said she couldn't hear. I'm getting, it's loud and clear for me.
Okay. Okay.
Suggested she might just turn up her volume on her laptop.
There you go.
That's it.
It's a desktop, and I started having this problem with a Zoom meeting yesterday, so I'm not sure why it's caused.
You can try earphones if you have any. That'll do it.
I have earphones.
Is there anything else on that box that says startup or Zoom?
I can hear wonderfully now.
Yep. There you go. And you look like a DJ. We're all set. Okay, so
what record do you want to hear?
Go ahead and mute if you can hear okay, Estelle, and because we're going to start. And Jane, I'll follow up with you once I get Donna going, and I'm getting some other text. So I'd like to introduce and start off with Donna Armour. Donna will have a book published on July 12th, which is fantastic, called Solo in Salento. And tonight she's going to kick us off. And yeah, Brooks. And she's going to kick us off this evening with an excerpt from that piece. So thanks, Donna.
Thank you. The title of this chapter is it's in part 3 of my book, which has 5 parts. It's called The Importance of Trash. Guttural voices rise in the cul-de-sac. I leave my writing place at the kitchen table and peek through the sun-filled window. My neighbor's Ranrod Back appears, her starched apron, spotless house dress, sensible black shoes, and silver hair create brushstrokes waiting for a canvas. She confers with 2 men straddling bicycles, with large spray canisters strapped to their backs. She gestures wildly towards my apartment and the trash ledge. The 2 men lean their bikes against the stone wall and spray around the ledge and my front door. I gasp as it registers my neighbor has called in exterminators. Will they ring my bell and ask to spray my trash containers as well as my apartment? Heat rises into my face as I wait for this humiliation, but I'm spared. Instead of knocking on my door, they move inside my neighbor's house, spraying for any contamination that might have migrated from my trash to hers. I fear I'm a suspect on the notorious trash list. I wonder if my face will be plastered on light posts all over town. Each day I double down, striving to memorize the trash rules, of which day which trash and which container to place on the ledge. Every morning and evening, my neighbor watches from her doorway. Sometimes when I pass muster, she nods. Days pass. Trash becomes a pleasant, if not passionate, experience like daily shopping and laundry. If my neighbor nods at me, an extra brilliance is added to my day, much like a gold star. Her nod reminds me I'm part of this community. I have to pull my weight to learn the ins and outs of what makes this village a good place to live. I'm not just a tourist, but I'm a contributor to the harmony and cleanliness required when living in tightly shared spaces. Today, my neatly tied parcel of trash swings by my side as I turn the corner to deposit it into the proper bin. My neighbor stands erect by our trash bins, waiting for me. I'm stuck, not sure whether to proceed or retreat. My stomach lurches, wondering if I've committed a trash sin. She pivots toward me and speaks in her heavy dialect. Non capisco, I murmur. She grabs my arm and marches me to the trash and points. I flip open the lid of my bin. It's still full of yesterday's trash. Without releasing my arm, she pulls me to her bin, nodding. I open it, revealing her pristinely stacked bags of trash. Our eyes meet. I'm silent, waiting for her insight and direction. She raises her fist, cursing the gods or the trash man or both. My arm automatically lifts in protest. She smiles slightly, satisfied that I'm as upset as she is. She releases her grip on my arm and says for the very first time, "Buongiorno, signora." On the inside, I smile with delight. On the outside, no sign of emotion crosses my face. Any sentiment displayed would be inappropriate and not in accordance with the mysterious trash rules. But a small miracle of acceptance has been given to me. I made an effort to learn the rules of recycling in a place where I barely speak the language. A complex endeavor I tackled through trial and error because I believed it was important. Life is not lived in solitude. It's lived in the conversations, the impressions, and interpretations of living in community. Today, my neighbor and I joined forces over trash. For now, it's enough.
Very nice. Very good. Thank you, Donna. Everyone. Thank you very, very much, and congratulations. So,
Thank you.
Donna's going to be one of our featured readers in the near future. So very nice. You did great too. I know. Real nice. Okay.
Thanks, Vivian.
You're welcome. So Miss Emily, I have you up next if you're ready, but I don't know if you would like me to come back to you, or I don't know what you're doing in your backyard there. Okay. So Emily Davis-Fletcher is a poet and also a teacher of poetry. She's going to be presenting her second class, or maybe third, but she's doing Playing with the Senses. It's a Poetry of the Body this coming June with the Pat Conroy Center. It'll be June 9th, 16th, and 23rd. If you're interested, you can sign up through the Pat Conroy website. And Emily, I don't know if you want to add anything to that before you read.
No, that's perfect. Thank you. And I'm so excited to be offering another workshop in partnership with the Conroy Center. So thank you, Jonathan and Brooke, and anyone who was in Pam, who's in my last workshop. Hey, Pam. Okay, so I'm going to embark. I'm going to read something that's fairly new. We just written over the weekend, and I haven't workshopped it much. It's been workshopped, but I haven't made those changes yet. So those who are in my workshop, I'm sorry, I've taken your suggestions, I just haven't gotten to them. All right, so I don't have a title for this, but it is dedicated to my lover, Dana Smith, and he said it was okay to share that. So, all right, so I want to tell you about the ballroom ceiling and floor of our lips, the soft shore of our bellies where we meet and do our best listening. But tonight's wind is a ventriloquist, giving a voice like a throat clearing to my roof and walnut trees. I must check on those busted sneakers hanging over a telephone line down the block. Remember, I pointed at the sunburst pair, ash-colored, framed by the limbs of oaks and contrails. When we stopped under that chandelier of holes and shadow, I should have kissed you, stepped us into a rumba of your humming, but we did that at home. Now the pines sway and creak, their ancestral bones of rocking chairs. The wind tries to braid and unbraid me. I'm afraid the shoes will twirl out of control, the frayed knot break before I arrive, but I find them still, funneling darkness and the flower moon, nowhere to be seen except in photos you sent this evening of your phoenix sky. Above me, their black souls point out and taper, silent as owl wings, but heavier. Bad news on the line today, open-toed, aghast. This afternoon they kicked, tried to run, while I walked through a shower of screams from children playing virus versus humans. The tallest boy's cry muffled by a blue handkerchief face mask. I could not hear his words as he wrestled a blonde girl to the ground. She could have disappeared if only she'd leaned against a crepe myrtle. No, not wings. The pair are like owl ears, which perch in different places on the head, asymmetric. One hangs lower, closer to the ground, hears me breathe, a flutter of grief in my lungs that is hereditary, and what feels like 40 stories below, a honeysuckle blossom shuffles across the tarmac on the back of an ant. The higher pair hears the clicks of pine cones shuddering before rain, the crinkle of cellophane within nests, the rustle of clouds filling with air like plastic bags. I hear your slow, quick hum, the leaf of your waking hand fall in mine, your voice on the phone before you left. Anger is a marriage. My laughter, silence buried inside my laughter, the will to carry a blossom against a tide of wind.
Yay.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a yay. Thank you. I don't even want to tell you what my favorite line in that was.
I guess. Is it anger is a marriage?
Oh yeah, that's it today.
And that has to go to Dennis. That's not even mine. That's what poets are. We're thieves. I just stole that.
I know, I stole somebody's line myself earlier today, so thank you, Emily. And yeah, Emily's classes are fabulous. So if anyone, even if you're not a poet, take a chance and learn a little bit about language and how to play with it and how to enhance your other writing. So, okay.
I love virus versus humans. I love when kids playing virus versus humans. What else?
Thank you, Estelle. Okay, well, our next reader is Ginny Apicella. Ginny, I'm so glad you got it. Unless you want to wait a minute. You want to wait a minute? You're on mute. I know it took you a while to get in. You're on mute, sweetheart. So down in the...
Okay, I got it.
There you go. Are you ready, or are you too close?
Could someone else go first?
Sure. Our next reader would be Elizabeth Robin. Elizabeth, would you care to go next? Would that be cool? Okay, great. So you can do a brief introduction. Elizabeth is another great poet, so take it away, Elizabeth. Yeah.
I don't know about that adjective. This is brand spanky new. I was editing up until like 5 minutes ago. We'll see. I'm sure you may have noticed, because most of us don't have the ability to do anything right now but stare up at the moon and the stars and the sun and so there've been a lot of like really cool moons in the last year that inspired this. I call it Inside the Moon. In supermoon season, passion rolls in werewolf moods, wild tides that expand to cover in aqua blue mystique, or contract to expose jettisoned sins on rocky beds. Supermoons enlarge until all of us howl. Souls bear secrets inside the moon. If I could read the water's surface in blood moonlight, I might understand how zigzags of a still glassy bay mark passages, how small choppy parts, like the rippling pile of a tweed jacket, worn. Orion burns high in the winter sky. His belt lights a path to new love. A suitor hunts me. He sees romance. Sure, we should kiss under that glow. Intoxicated, I remove his head like a mantis mid-coitus. Watch an egret inch the lagoon's circumference. Find sleep. A mother's spirit ghosts away, punished and punishing, as the mantis spins inside the silver light. A mist rises through the pines, obscures its shape, inhales its shine. The kiss lusters the beaver moon, and the light arcs low, deserts early, arrives late, like that bad boyfriend who keeps popping up but never calls, darkens your door only to light you up and leave. A brightness wakes me, low and swollen she hangs. Awaiting a lover this night, the moon tilts, climbs high, spills love light into flickering stars. Will she kiss Venus again tonight, or ride astride Mars, bucking wild? A harvest moon lights frozen stubble. The wind softens the singing chimes. A quiet falls, the dead season. Winter arrives confused. Prophecies have changed. Forecasting Armageddon seems a dead-end job. Better to ignore the signs, work a psychic charm, act the magician who makes it disappear, stuff ears with white noise, patch eyes in Kodachrome, sleight of hand. It only hurts when we hope, and then only if we love.
Nice.
Thank you for
Beautiful.
that. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, these are a lot of new poems that are just really hot off the press and wonderful. So thank you so much. I'll go to Katherine and let Ginny get her breath a little bit more and then come back. So Katherine,
Vivian, I'm only seeing like 9 pictures. I didn't see the last reader at all. Is there another way to get more people on here?
up in the top right-hand corner is a gallery selection. I'm seeing, let's see, 4 by 5. So I'm seeing 20, and I actually have 2 pages. So, for example, Carl we got a couple people doing the black box gig. So they don't have their video on. But if you do gallery, you should be able to see, I'm sorry.
This is
About-
participants? Nope.
20 people. But
No
either,
one did 9.
okay.
There's nothing that says
It depends
gallery.
on your screen too. Everyone, along with the setting, Jenny, it could be your screen.
Uh-huh.
So, and also you probably want to, when you're not speaking, put your down below mute, so that when there's a movement, you don't get the camera coming to you. There you
Ginny,
go.
So I'm on the camera and I see 8 other people.
Well, why don't you take this opportunity to read, and then when you're not reading, you can play around with all the settings.
Okay. Okay.
Love that idea.
All right.
Okay.
So you want me to go before Katherine?
Yeah,
Okay.
that'd be terrific.
Okay. So my husband and I travel a lot, and then I say I should really be writing something about what we travel. So we were in Portugal a couple of years ago, and I wrote this piece. And when I was trying to figure out what I was going to read tonight, I knew this was a shorter piece, and so that's why I'm reading it. Okay. It is not a poem. An evening in Chiado. The first thing I noticed was her gold shoes. They were sparkly with a low heel. Dorothy's shoes, but not ruby red. The gold shoes adorned the feet of a young woman with a jumble of luxurious mahogany curls who was anchored in a passionate embrace with a man in a long tweed coat and a fashionably scruffy beard. She was about 20 or 21, and he was perhaps 8 years or so older. He was attractive, maybe not handsome, but manly and robust. His dark hair was tousled, not combed. He was a good 10 inches taller and had to bend to kiss her. It was not a peck, but a full mouth-to-mouth kiss. His large hand embraced her cheek and jaw, guiding her lips to his. Oblivious to all that surrounded them, they were in the middle of a mosaic-tiled pedestrian street. The fast foot traffic parted and detoured around the two like a boat slicing through the water and leaving a wake behind. We were in Chiado, an affluent hilltop neighborhood in Lisbon. It wasn't yet sunset, but it was that hour when everything appears golden and hazy, making you feel slightly drunk, though you have yet to drink wine. In certain areas of the Chiado, you can see the hills of Lisbon and the Tagus River, but not where we were, in one of those small squares with a church on one end and a pedestaled statue of a Portuguese duke or cardinal in the center. Pigeons nested on the head of this one. On the opposite side of the square was a medieval convent, now a contemporary art gallery. But on the side of the square, there were several cafes with yellow umbrellas. Close to me, an impromptu band with open guitar cases waiting for the crowd's gratitude were playing American jazz. The musicians, a vocalist, a violinist, a guitarist, and a percussionist playing a cajon, segued into Sweet Georgia Brown. Some of the band's audience were seated under the cafe umbrellas, sipping coffee or beer, while the rest of us leaned against a wall, waiting for the restaurants to open for dinner. That's when I first spotted the amorous pair. Some, like me, were watching the couple as if it was street art. The tall man stopped kissing her and bent to say something in her ear. She cocked her head to one side and gave him a rapturous smile. He murmured something to her and nuzzled her neck. She placed both hands on his chest, then hid them under his lapels. They kissed again. I wondered what he said that pleased her so. I wondered if she would kick off her glittery shoes when they walked into whatever room they were destined for. I imagined he would drink kava from one of those gold shoes while his eyes found her face. A waiter from one of the cafes dropped a tray and we all jumped to avoid the spilled wine and the crashing glass. The band continued to play. Now it was Satin Doll. When I looked back up, the couple was gone.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you. I think that's a Friday night reading. It's only Thursday. Okay, thank you. And I hope you're able to pick up, just play around a little bit. So,
Okay.
Vivian,
I'm impressed you know what day it is, Vivian.
That's what every night's Friday night.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's impressive.
all right.
Time.
Next we have Katherine Tandy Brown. So Katherine, maybe you can give us a little intro on what you're going to read for us. That'd be terrific.
Sure. This is a chapter in a memoir I'm writing about my mother's last 5 years on the earth. It's called Anne, Queen of the Wing Chair. And a chapter from this appears in the issue of SCWA's Catfish Stew, but not this chapter. Okay, and she's nicknamed Queen for a reason that you don't need to know, but she is, because she was a queen. All right, this is called Anne Tandy Seagull at Myrtle Beach. Though Mom spent years settling upon her specific beliefs about an afterlife, she was clear about being cremated as soon as was legal for her body left the world. A born-again Christian, my sister Lindsay wasn't comfortable with the idea of cremation, but the Queen had been adamant about things, that she'd come back and haunt anyone who even thought about burying her, and that if she were put in an open casket, she'd sit up in the middle of it and shriek like a banshee. Even my strong-willed older sister knew better than to try to cross the woman who'd blessed her with a damn the torpedoes full steam ahead disposition. So much to the dismay of the saccharine, somber funeral home rep, we insisted on cremation, and eventually Mom's ashes filled a delicate, hand-painted Chinese vase that had stood with a twin on either side of a shiny brass carriage clock for eons on the mantel above the fireplace. "Bury me at the beach," she'd said numerous times, always laughing, her rich brown eyes dancing with light. But I'm serious. Her instructions were clear, for when at the beach, Mom always smiled so often and so hard she got cramps in her cheeks. She adored the plaintive cries of the seagulls, the roar of breakers ramming the shoreline, the exquisite roughness of sand between her toes, and the thin film of salt grit on her skin. The sea, the air, the shorebirds, starfish, sand dollars, hermit crabs, and platter upon platter of seafood. The seashore was her heart place and with her final home. About 6 months after her memorial service, Anne in the Chinese urn and I drove first to Charlotte to collect Lindsay and then to Myrtle Beach, where my favorite cousin Beth and her husband Jack lived for 6 months each year. A Grace Kelly look-alike and just as inside, Beth had adored Mom and had made it a point to drive to Kentucky to visit her often, especially after Mom's second husband died, my stepfather. Though separated by 3 decades, they'd chatter and gossip together like schoolgirls. "Beth always makes me feel so young," Mom once said. While Anne waited far more patiently in the urn than she would have in life, Beth fed Lindsay and me tuna sandwich halves and tomato soup before the 3 of us struck out for the beach and found the spot where the Queen's remains mingled with salt and sea air. A breeze gusted down the coastline, sculpting sand whirls like waterspouts, them into tiny dunes. We formed a circle against the wind, the 3 of us. The urn was surprisingly weighty, and I held it firmly, carefully removing first a fat yellow bow from atop the vase, Lindsay's addition at the funeral home that made us both snicker, and then one sheet of masking tape. I looked inside. Anne Queen was but a fine gray dust. As I held the vase close, we put our arms around each other and each in turn said a short prayer. Though my eyes were closed, I grew aware of a presence. Opening them, I looked down. Standing within our circle of 3 was a lone seagull. It was not begging for crumbs, not calling to its mate, not poised to run if anyone made a quick move. It simply stood there as if it knew exactly what it was doing. A laugh bubbled up from my belly, and Beth and Lindsay looked. "Why, it's Anne, isn't it?" Beth said. "The same, of course," I laughed. "She always said she never wanted to miss anything, and here she is." That said, I turned toward the ocean and upended the urn. We all watched through tears as the silvery powder swirled into the wind, catching drafts, dancing across the sand. When the vase was finally empty, I looked back at the place we'd stood in a circle. The seagull was gone. Anne Queen had finally found her home.
Thank you, Katherine. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Did I say that the title of the book is Anne Queen of the Wing Chair? That's the name of the book.
You did.
Okay.
You
Cool.
did. And
Cool.
congratulations on, congratulations on Catfish Stew.
Thank you. You too, Vivian.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so June Labazon, I don't see you anywhere on the site, so we'll go on to Arthur Wilbanks. Welcome back, Arthur. Arthur, last time we had you, I forgot to say that we're reading from a screenplay, which is so important because of the way it's written into the
Yes. Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
All right.
All right. I'll get right to it. My screenplay is about a Marine, Jake Boatwright, who has a terminal illness, and he's trying to extract or extort money from a war profiteering company executive. And so we just kind of pick up the dialogue here on page 38. Porter Van Arsdale, who's kind of an arrogant individual who had a golden parachute worth $40 or $50 million. And Jake, the Marine, cannot understand this. So Porter says to him, "Look, Jake, decisions are made by companies as to why they pay executives more than other employees based on many factors that perhaps you don't fully grasp." Sarcastically, Jake stares at Van Arsdale. Yeah, go ahead, enlighten me. I'll listen to your bullshit. Van Arsdale's snootiness is apparent. He rolls his eyes. Well, let's see, Jake, if I can clarify this rather complicated subject so that you might better comprehend. And Van Arsdale pauses with a condescending stare and says to Jake, Jake, my background may enlighten you. I was a Yale graduate. I have a master's degree from the Wharton Business School, and I've served as chief financial officer for several Fortune 500 companies. Jake, so you make big bucks for them, right? Van Arsdale bristles. Well, again, many factors come into play. I was recruited to problem solve, correct the falling stock prices. Unfortunately, these efforts were not always successful due to a variety of reasons beyond my control. Jake, well, wait a minute. So you failed, but they still give you lots of money? Well, no, Jake, they didn't give me anything. I negotiated a prior agreement contract whereby, regardless the outcome of my employment, I would be guaranteed certain monetary compensations. Jake, I'm confused. Why would a company guarantee you a big payout if you flopped? Van Arsdale can't hide his disdain for Jake's lack of business acumen. Jake, when companies are in trouble, they seek out only the best and the brightest to come in, fix problems. Top talent negotiates contracts favorable to themselves. Companies are willing to pay for the best. It's much like a successful athlete demanding enormous salaries. It's the same thing. Jake takes out a pack of gum, chews. So he says, okay, good, I get it. So you were kind of like a Babe Ruth in the business world, made big money because you could hit them out of the park. Is that right? Well, Porter Van Arsdale says, in a manner of speaking, yes. Jake continues to chew his gum and he stares at Van Arsdale. Okay, babe, but let's talk about the side action you have going on. Maybe with your young lady friend. Defensive Van Arsdale begins to squirm uncomfortably. Now, wait, Jake, this is strictly platonic. It was just helping a young lady with her college expenses. Jake stops chewing, carefully moves his gum, folds it in a paper napkin. Jake, bullshit. Don't hand me that crap. We both knew that this was just your little secret. Your wife doesn't know anything. You're such a smart guy. I bet nobody knows. Van Arsdale recognized he's been caught. Now listen, Jake, I'm not perfect. Who is? I'm certain we can work out some arrangement that's mutually beneficial. Jake, yeah, sure. Like a business negotiation, right? Maybe a contract. I walk away with what I want, regardless of the outcome. Right, babe? Stunned, Van Arsdale sits in silence. You see, babe, Jake says, with all your talk about capitalism, how big business operates, here's the thing. I don't give a damn. Porter Van Arsdale. So what do you want? It's pretty simple. You're going to transfer $10 million to a certain organization in Cambodia, and the money is going to be used to remove unexploded cluster bombs. Oh, my 3 minutes isn't up?
Yes, yeah, it was.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize to the group.
No, don't apologize. That was a good place to stop, really, where a cluster bomb.
Listen, Vivian and the group, I'm no poet, all right? Thank you.
We love that you're here, and we love that having a screen. It's nice for the diversity of our readers. So
it's more like Quentin Tarantino. That's the kind of thing. And
That kind of is. I like that about it.
All right, thank you.
Nice.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next on our list this evening is Jackie Markham. So Jackie, would you like to step up to the mic?
I guess I better unmute. All right, I have 3 short poems to read, and if I don't talk about it, I'll have plenty of time. So let me just plunge in to a poem called Yearning as Athena. When yearning comes to you as Athena, you must decipher the symbols that fall to the ground from her shield. You must look without flinching into the flash from her sword. When she commands you to dive into black water swamp, you go. When she asks that you pull tree frogs from limbs of cypress, you do. When she tells you to gaze into orange ringed eyes to find your green soul, you must. When yearning comes to you as Athena, you must stand naked in your wrinkled green skin and wear a mask. This next poem is, thank you. This next poem is a combination of a dream and it's a prompt about a dream image. It has an epigraph. The title is Baptism Dream Dance. When I listened to music, the rays and vibrations of the music streamed to this one fount of light within me, where they reflected themselves in spiritual vision, not the mirror of the brain, but of the soul. Isadora Duncan. I dreamed that it is my turn to dance. I am nude and I'm to dance a baptism. I dance gracefully like Isadora with gestures of water pouring over my body. After I am fully cleansed, I reach to the heavens and the words ink like blood flow from my soul and I speak them. After, I am criticized by the other dancers, especially the dancers were against my words at the end, ink like blood. The dancers say I should follow certain traditional movements. My dance was improvised and my own. It was my turn to dance. This final, very brief poem, in fact, 8 lines. It's a triolet, and it has a very distinctive form with 2 refrains. It's dedicated to musician Melissa Etheridge, who lost her son yesterday, and it's called Grief, a triolet. My grief, a knife cut sharp my heart. Blood spills out the wound. My grief, a knife so deep it cut. Will it ever knit to open? My grief, a knife cut sharp my heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you. Very nice. That's very nice. That was a tragedy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much. Yeah. Yeah.
And many, dedicated to many others too right now, but especially to her.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Well, we've got a run on poetry here this evening, which is kind of interesting. Phil Spillane coming all the way from Ireland. So you're our next reader. If you don't mind giving a brief introduction, that would be terrific.
Can you hear me clearly?
Yep, I think so, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Vivian and everyone here. There's a great mix here, not just poetry and prose, but even a part of a screenplay, which is absolutely fantastic. It's very enriching and keeps my brain active, which is very important for all of us. We'll keep all our brains active. I'm actually going to read a newish poem that I wrote for a very good friend of mine from Germany, Kadi. She's one of the most enriching, silliest people I ever met. She's absolutely wonderful individual. And I wrote this poem to her when she was going back home to Germany. And I put a lot of thought into this. And it's full of our conversations and what we got up to and a few of the weird text messages we had going back and forward. So there might be some weird quotes in here, but it's mostly built up from what we got up to and give you a sense of her wonderful character and what we stopped talking between ourselves. So I hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much. Finding that Caddy's pockets are full of mandarin trees, revealing them magically as juggling bows, maturing their petticoats of citric thorns, I felt I ate part of the sun. Reusing the orange peel as sleeping bags, we curl up under the twilight. Finding that Caddy's pockets are full of banana bread, with our mouths full of dough and conversation, I felt I ate part of the moon. Reusing the crumbs as fairy bells in which we chime. We run, our hearts will beat a drummer's party, and when we slow down, we'll tickle the parasites living through our pillows. Arm in arm, oh silly, returning to the fiery, emptying our pockets till the moon goes home, growing mushroom trees till the sun comes up, feeling the richest I've ever been, eating the end of my mandarin and listening to my best friend. Thanks very much for listening, and hope you keep well and healthy.
Thank you, Phil. It's so nice to meet you. Thanks for being here. Thank you. Yeah, it's funny. I am going to be talking a little bit about mandarins later on. So there's a little bit of thievery going on here, probably on my part. So anyway, thank you.
Thanks again.
Martha, you're welcome. Glad you're here. Martha, you're our next contestant. If you give us a quick intro, that would be great. And take it away.
Right. This is just a little piece of a scene in my third novel. It's a series. The title of this one is Tidewater, Tidewater Tempest. It's about a storm. The bed shook. Abby bolted upright, both hands flattened on the mattress beside her hips. Light strobing outside the windows in frantic bursts caused the house to vibrate. She pressed gently on Tom's chest and gave him a shake. Tom. He grumbled, "Wake up." "Wow, what's going on?" He sat up and grabbed her hand. "Something's happening. I think the storm is right on top of us. The cottage just shook. It awakened me from a dead sleep." "The house shook?" Bright light flashed through the windows again. A near-splitting crack followed. "Damn." He yawned and gave his neck a vigorous rub. "The hair just stood up on my neck. This thing is right on top of us." The house groaned and creaked. Doors bumped against walls. Tom tossed the sheet aside. "Come on, bring your flashlight." They stood in the doorway of the screen porch. Water pooled below all the screens. Abby aimed her light beam outside. Moss and broken bits of tree limbs lay everywhere. "Yard's a wreck." She moved her light to the road. "At least the water's not over the bank yet." "What time is it now?" he said. She checked her watch. 1:30. Tom's light found hers. "Damn, when's high tide?" "Around 9 in the morning. I checked it yesterday, so I'm pretty sure that's right." "Which means it'll turn around 3. Might be to the road by 5 or 6. It's a good thing this cottage is built on sturdy pilings." The wind's howl grew louder. Limbs snapped and thudded to the sandy earth like stomping feet. Sprawling cedar limbs snapped from tree trunks, exposed fibrous red insides and expelled their scent. An eerie crack to their left made Abby and Tom jump. "Okay, Tom, it's here. Now what?" "Trees are coming down everywhere," Tom said. He was already on the move. "Come on." He grabbed her free hand. "Bathtub's our best bet. Throw in shorts or something decent. Fast." They scrambled into yesterday's clothes. Abby snatched their pillows and bedspread. Their route to the bathroom went through Blix's room. Abby's light hesitated on her friend's hairdryer. "Be safe." In the guest bathroom, she folded the bedspread several times, then arranged it in the bottom of the clawfoot tub and put pillows in for backrests. "This'll be snug." Tom hesitated. "I'll get our shoes. We'll need them later." "Good thinking. And cups, Tom, get cups. We can get water from the sink." When he left, she darted to the living room and directed her light to the barometer. "Damn, pressure's down. A lot." She scrambled back to the bathroom. Tom returned several minutes later with both hands full. She worked out ridges in the bedspread, then stepped into the tub and squirmed into her space. He stashed things around the cloth feet. She looked up when something crinkled. Tom held a large bag of barbecue potato chips. She frowned. Chips? That's enough.
Thank you, Martha. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Great revision. I don't think I've heard that before. That's terrific.
Thank you.
Welcome. You're welcome. Okay, Miss Jane, how are you tonight? Yep.
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Just as a note, Mac was denied, so he will not be joining us, and he had a new story and everything. But he was denied entry by the program. He can't figure out what was wrong. So, and the two of us.
Because we tried earlier, but thank you for working with him, Jane. I appreciate it.
We tried. Okay, I'm going to read tonight an excerpt from one of my short stories that's part of my novella, which I keep changing the name of it. Right now it's called The Boston Tales. It changes its name regularly. And this is set in South Boston. Much of the story is set in different parts and different neighborhoods of Boston. This one is in South Boston, and it jumps back and forth in time. So this is called A Promise Kept, South Boston, Then and Now. He loved the smell of incense. When he was assigned to certain solemn masses, Francis Xavier Fitzgerald would jockey with the other pre-teenage altar boys to win a space behind the celebrant in the slow procession around St. Monica's. Francis carried the heavy polished candlestick close to his chest, holding it as if he had the devil himself by his tail, lest it slip to the tile floor and invite Monsignor's wrath. He walked close on the heels of the priest, swinging the incense burner, inhaling clouds of smoking resins and frankincense. The pungent fragrance reminded him of sweet cinnamon and transported the boy to a world he found nowhere else in his life. One feast day, his daydreams took him to the edge of a cavern. He watched hungry flames lick up its walls, felt the heat of the fire, and heard the screams of the damned before returning to the altar and full awareness. Another time, he daydreamed his way to heaven and saw his mother. She was beautiful again, not sick at all. And she smiled into his eyes as if he were the baby Jesus. After that particular vision, Francis was convinced that the church held many mysteries for him. He was a boy who loved mysteries. And by age 12, he knew he was meant to spend his life unraveling them. He also knew to keep his epiphany to himself. Drop. Frankie Fitz! The shout rang up Old Colony Avenue, loud enough to be heard over South Boston's morning traffic. Father Fitzgerald paused at the door of St. Monica's and turned, confused for a moment. So many years have passed since I've had occasion to visit the old neighborhood, he thought. Who would recognize me now? 45 pounds heavier, black suited and Roman collared. Double drop. Back in the day, Frankie had roamed Southie streets like the other boys his age, all of them escaping cramped tenement houses and parents who were overworked, drunk, or both. They taught each other to fight, to hustle, to protect themselves and their imagined territory. West to the T-Tracks, south to Dorchester, east to Carson Beach, and north to Thompson Park. The rest of Southie was an acknowledged territory of the Gate of Heaven kids, and they fought many of their skirmishes along this fault line. One Saturday when Francis was 9, his outside battles were interrupted by his father's shouts. "Frankie, get in here, you little hoodlum. Your mother's asking for you." During that last visit to his mother's bedside, she reached for his hand and made him swear a solemn oath, a promise that he would become one of Monsignor's altar boys. I'll be watching you, Francis, she'd said, squeezing his fingers extra hard. Remember, Ma loves you, and don't ever forget, you promised me. She'd known his father would abandon him to the solace of pubs and other women's company once she was gone. She'd counted on the solemnity of the oath to remain with her son when she could not. It did have a lasting effect, one that kept Francis from most of the missteps a kid could make. Monsignor's stern grip kept him from the worse. A voice called out his childhood nickname once again, nearer this time. Only someone from the street gang would dare call me Frankie Fitz, the priest thought. He stood on the steps, left hand poised to open one of the heavy wooden doors while he scanned the avenue for a recognizable face. His right hand reached back to the thin wallet he kept in the back pocket of his clerical suit. He would probably need it soon. Okay, that's it.
That was terrific. That was terrific.
Thank you.
Nice writing, Jane. Thank you so much. Really, really vivid. Thank you.
Great pacing.
Yeah.
Got us going with you.
Miss Estelle, you're next.
Oh, okay. I'm unmuted, and thank you all for the advice on the headphones. I realized I had headphones connected to my desktop. That's why I was not able to hear. So I disconnected him. I'm fine now. This is a memoirs piece. I'm just writing these from time to time. It's called John Popham Made Me Cry. And it's for Ann Rivers Siddons, who wrote a series of reflections in the early 90s called John Chancellor Makes Me Cry. John Chancellor was like Walter Cronkite. In high school, I expressed the desire to write as a profession, to be a newspaper reporter and write books like Ernest Hemingway. My teachers at Notre Dame High School in Chattanooga, especially my English teacher, listened. Mr. Robert Park was a meticulous dresser and speaker. A perfectionist, he often was the brunt of our youthful stupidity in class, which he ignored. He infused us with a love for the poetry of Samuel Taylor Coleridge. If I never knew any other literary lines, I certainly remembered water, water everywhere, and not a drop to drink, from that famous rhyme. Mr. Park took me to meet the editor of the Chattanooga Times. The Times was an anomaly for the South, to be sure. In fact, a lot of Chattanooga was unusual. While it had deep problems with racial segregation, there was a moderate, cultured spirit due to the education that some had achieved or attracted to the area. Northern soldiers and officers had returned to Chattanooga after the Civil War and built iron forges and steel manufacturers and fabricators, insurance companies, and other large businesses, and pitched in for some culture. The University of Chattanooga, now part of UT, was started. 2 German opera musicians escaping Nazi Germany founded the Chattanooga Lyric Opera. The Chattanooga Times actually preceded the New York Times. And the New York Times, as we know it, was brought to life by Adolph Ochs, who first published the Chattanooga paper and then bought the paper that became the New York Times. He also gave light to the national movement to preserve Civil War battle sites, starting with the Chattanooga-Chickamauga National Battlefield, then on to Gettysburg, then Shiloh. John Popham III, the editor of the Chattanooga Times, was a Virginian and a World War II veteran. As a New York Times reporter, he was given the task of covering the South full-time, the first time in U.S. newspaper history. I did not know all this when I sat in a little cubby of an office with him and Mr. Park, but I do remember his message. After covering Little Rock, the trial of the killers of Emmett Till, and all the early racial disturbances throughout the South, he managed the newspaper we were reading every day in the late 50s and early 60s. International news was prominent on the front pages with a masthead and typeface and columnists that echoed the New York paper. Popham talked fast, but with a Tidewater, Virginia accent. I was fascinated with how he said about. It was more like a boot. He talked about the absolute necessity of good reporters covering the news of the world to protect our freedoms. I know I'd read Anne Frank's diary, and I was big on Exodus and other accounts of mass exterminations in Europe. That may have been what we talked about. He was so emphatic that our democracy could not exist unless there were reporters there recording and showing everyone the injustices around the world. Reporters were the front line. I saw myself joining this elite group of writers, doing something with my life that would matter greatly. I was so impressed with his impassioned speech about the role of journalists that I began to cry. It didn't interrupt him. I must have wiped the tears and gone on, but I walked away with a firm sense of mission. Later, I learned of a little-known scholarship program and applied for it. As a result, I was able to attend and graduate from St. Mary's College in Notre Dame, Indiana, where I saw Dr. Martin Luther King speak at nearby Notre Dame, interviewed Betty Friedan, and heard one of the Berrigan brothers speak about Vietnam, and saw many other luminaries on the national and international scene. After that, I spent a year in Chicago where I worked on a weekly newspaper and marched with Dr. King during his urban push. Then to the warmer climes of Atlanta, where a news editor gave me a job as a reporter in the Atlanta office of United Press International, where the biggest news was Georgia Governor Lester Maddox, Alabama Governor George Wallace, and Dr. King in his marches across the South.
That's really cool, Estelle. Thank you. That gave us a lot of depth about you and the writing. So thank you. That was well done. Thank you very much. Okay, cool. We'll look forward to more of that. We're gonna move on from memoir to poetry again. We've got Pam Campbell. Thanks for joining us tonight, Pam. Pam was part of Emily's poetry group, and she and her daughter, were honored to have her as well listening. So welcome, Pam.
Thank you. This is a poem, and the title is Lopsided Ear Dog. He ain't for sale, he says. His watery blue eyes squint hard at me. I squat and trace lopsided dog's ear with a grass-stained finger. I ain't asking to buy, I say. He licks his lips and stabs snuff-stained fingers at me. You looking like you want to buy, he says. My pocket bulging with robbed piggy bank coins holds his truth, along with the smile that tugs at my mouth with each lick of lopsided ear dog's tongue. I ain't, I say, and pull all 4 feet of me into that space where negotiating lies, truly lies, and turn to walk away. For anything can be bought or sold, my daddy Paul says, if you ain't too eager. Hold on there, young'un, he says. What will you give for the pup? I turn, slow-like, the way I seen Daddy Paul do, and stub my toe, thoughtful-like. How much will you take for him, I say? He spits. Black mingles in the dry dirt just shy of my bare toes, and lays another pinch of snuff between Chiefkin teeth. You Austin's grand young'un for sure, he says. How about you give me that there in your pocket, and we'll call it done. I am the grand young'un of Austin, mixer and painter of colors for homes and movie house murals, an undefeated town champion of checkers. Taught me to read, he did, books and dreams, and that I was no better nor worse than anyone, and to hold my ground with my boy cousins instead of crying. Half of what's in my pocket, I say, and stick my hand out. He spits, grins, and takes my hand. Done, he says. Yes, sir, I say, and dance all the way home with lopsided ear dog.
That was great. Welcome, Pam. That was fantastic. You could just watch all the faces smile, and that was really, really beautiful.
Thank you.
Voice, love that voice. So welcome and thank you. Yeah, terrific. All right, Mr. Brad Beck, you're our next contestant. There you are. He's another Lowcountry Weekly poet, and welcome aboard, another Emily Fletcher student. So we're glad to have you. Yep.
Yeah, I would testify and advocate for Emily's sessions. She got me to be a published poet. I can't even believe I can say that. Thank you, Emily.
All right, go ahead.
All right, this is not a poem though. This is I guess, creative nonfiction. It's a story about the Key West Half Marathon. For several years, I always run the Key West Half Marathon because it's a great party, and anybody that knows Key West is not surprised by that. So this is when I came in first among 5,000 runners at the Key West Half Marathon. I call it my first, the Key West Almost Half Marathon. The rustle of whipping rain gear sounded like 100 flags flapping in the wind. There was a rhythmic unison as the runners dodged puddles in stride, and the wind bursts caused flutter crescendos. Rain and wind delayed the start of the Key West Half Marathon, but as usual, runner spirits were high and dry. Marvelous, mystical moments, extraordinary, unexpected exploits, and wonderful, weird shit happen at Key West. You can't seek it out. You just have to be open to it, especially in the well-organized Key West Half Marathon. On my 5 previous Key West races, along with a couple packs of goo energy packets, I've carried a $10 bill. Mile 11 on the race course tracks down Whitehead Street right past my go-to Key West bar, the Green Parrot. That 10 spot has always been marked for my aspiration to pop into the Green Parrot during the race, enjoy a cold draft, and finish happy and refreshed in mind and the Key West spirit. It's always been closed. The race starts at 7 and nobody's home at the Green Parrot by the time I get there during the race. Welcome, wind and rain at Race Time 2019. So intense that wise race officials delayed the start time about 2 hours. Happy to reach mile 11 around the southernmost point with shoes that had dried to damp sponginess and knees that were not screaming, but thighs that were, I realized the Green Parrot was just ahead. Running down Whitehead Street, I could see an unusual number of people milling around the bar entrance. My head lifted, my mind shifted from throbbing thighs to eager hope. My pace picked up, and I headed toward the open door like a guy meeting his long-lost lover at the airport. Yes, the race was delayed, and the bar was open. I dug a sweat-soaked $10 bill out of my shorts and apologized to the bartender as she served me a cold draft. "You're the first runner to stop in," she told me as she stared at the soggy bill like it was a dirty diaper. That first sip was euphoric. "Cheers," I toasted to my barmates, trying to contain my rapture to something less than the spectacle it had become. 2 minutes after my first drink, another runner came in, panting, through the door into the bar and ordered a beer. But I was first, my first race first, a PR to the Parrot. I stepped back onto the race course haughtily like a prize winner with my go-to cup of beer as a trophy. I reached the 13.1 finish of the race as runner 1,346, but I had already finished first as a 2019 Key West Green Parrot almost half winner. I had another trophy beer to celebrate.
That was really fun. Estelle, you're not on mute, so all your laughing was coming through. So.
Yeah, I was reaching back for some delightful memories here at this anxious time, I guess.
Yeah, it was. Thank you for lightening us all up. Yeah, we need as much frivolity as we can get. And I saw Elizabeth taking a good swig of beer, so I think she was joining you in your marriage.
Cheers, everybody! Cheers.
Okay.
Wonderful, very wonderful.
Barbara Bausch, you're up next, and we've got Synergy in Red and some more poetry. So please introduce yourself. Welcome.
Okay, thank you. This was inspired by sitting in the porch and through Emily's poetry workshop. So I recommend her highly as well. Synergy in Red darts through the trees like two red arrows, one chasing the other, flittering, fluttering, courting. Landing on opposite limbs, they stare at each other, chattering. Taking flight again, they loop around, staying together through the trees and for life, like my mate and I, seeing the red flash of merrymaking, hearing the songs of joy, feeling the energy in their presence. I'm reminded of your grace and softness, your persistence and your self-assuredness, our creativity and innovation, the synergy that was us.
Yay. Thank you, Barbara. Yay, good work. Thank you so much. Every week you give us something different. Every month, yeah, it's either fiction, yeah, so very good. Thank you. So we've got one of our stars from the Pat Conroy Center who may or may not read. Brooke, have you decided if you're going to read this evening or? You're on mute. That's not a good start. Oh.
Hey.
Hi.
I'll if we have time, I'll read something.
We got time. You're up.
Okay. I'm gonna read the end of a chapter from a memoir I'm working on. This is coming off of a long scene, so some of it may not make sense, but when I was younger, I used to run away from home with my bulldog named Girly, and anyway, this is coming off a scene from a traumatic event, and we end up by the river, so this is the ending. Girly and I met up with the Willacoochee River, miles and miles away from home. The oaks, like wise women, towered over the river, the peppered Spanish moss whipping in the wind. Cypress knees jutted out, their faces melting into the water like sad gnomes. Turtles scattered across the surface, poking up one by one, making themselves sing. I had known the land like the palm of my hand, every line a map in my flesh. Clouds arranged themselves into shapes. A goat, an elephant, a bird, the face of a dog that had long passed. A breeze came, lifting the moss, creating shadows along the dirt, splotched with summer rain. It wasn't long before the grayness peeled away from the sky and the sun came out. The rays lit up the trunks of trees, lining the riverbank with yellow, a halo rising from the earth, as if pieces of heaven itself were scattered there and left alone. It wasn't easy to believe in such things, as the moccasins skimmed the dark waters, seeking revenge from dusk until dawn, or how the alligators waited, always patient for their next meal. The black waters of Georgia hid something great from me. The water lapped at my ankles, its whole body breathing, swift like a pair of new baby lungs. It sloshed up against the canoe, tied down to the bank, as the minnows stirred up the mud between my toes, and a straggly piece of the honeysuckle vine dangled from my wrist. I tried slurping out the last bit of sweetness that I could. How could I not love this place? My head tilted upwards to the elongated necks of loblolly pines, as the wind leaned into me like a lonely friend wanting to talk. I saw my sailboat across the river, wedged between a fallen limb and the root of a cypress, water trickling beneath it, trying to push it along. Poor thing was stuck, and I couldn't do anything about it. I felt Girly's breath on the back of my legs. I turned to her, squatted and blew into her eyes, obliterating the nest of gnats feasting on her. I petted her with both hands, twirling her ears into loops, around and around my index fingers. Her eyes settled, and her grin wide as a birthday clown's. The sunlight was getting warmer, and I watched it go around us, making sleeves of gold along my forearms. They'd never stop us.
Yay. It was worth the wait there, Miss Brooke. Thank you.
It's powerful.
Yeah, very nice.
Very good.
All right, before we go on, we've got a featured writer, Mr. John Williams, at the end of our evening, and who finally made it in. Thank you, John. But before you go, I'm just glad you're here, I'll tell you. Have I missed anyone else that would like to read? Because we got quite a group, and I think I was able to get everyone. Carl, I see you're on there somewhere. Is there anyone else that would like to read before? Okay. All right. Well, John, I've got a little introduction here that, thank you for sending this along. John Williams is a short story writer and novelist. He recently completed his first novel, Too High in the Wind, a story filled with suspense and seasoned with a romantic subplot. In his novel, John pulls from his experience in the military, his background as a teacher and stockbroker, and his knowledge and skill as a writer to craft a story about Becca Noble, an MFA grad who recently lost her mother, Allison, in a deadly car crash where Becca was a passenger with only foggy memories of the incident. What ensues is a thriller that takes us from New York to South Carolina, through mountains to the ocean, as a murderer pursues Becca and takes all of us along for the ride. It's my pleasure to introduce John Williams, proud son of Yemassee, with an excerpt from his soon-to-be published novel, Too High in the Wind. So, John, good evening.
Thank you, and I apologize. Am I muted or not muted?
You're very good. You're right on there.
All right, all right. What I'm going to read is an excerpt from the novel, and it's going to have Becca and Nate see each other for the first time. It's going to be hard to follow part of it, but this is really Nate's introduction. He's a marksmanship instructor at Paris Island, and Becca and her father and stepmother are on a tour, and they're going to have the beginnings of their hate at first sight relationship. Nate was waiting for the tour bus. It came every Saturday morning, waddling in across Leatherneck Square, depositing its cargo of former Marines. Gunny Kearns called it a pilgrimage to the god of eagle, globe, and anchor, the Marine Corps emblem they'd worship here before being sent forward to carry out the Corps' commandments. The bus was coming. Nate could hear its ancient diesel straining in the soft sand before easing as it reached the gravel, heading towards Gunny Kearns' hideout, a shed filled with targets and computers whose plywood walls smelled of the coffee of 4 wars. The bus flushed Kearns. He exited slowly, straightening his DI hat as he walked. His pace was measured, balanced, his arms swinging evenly, a march he did by habit. He strode to the bus, halting, then pivoting, a parade ground left face, directing the passengers to the bleachers like a traffic cop. Nate watched the unloading, nothing unexpected, always older guys, no kids, only wives or girlfriends, no trophies, not in the last 3 months he'd been watching, not until the day. The trophy came first, pretty, coal black hair, steered by her captor, big, older, camo jacket, trailed by a blonde girl, young, skinny, tanned, and frowning. He watched her climb, her faded cargo shorts and white shirt moving upwards, reaching the top, poised like a princess, joining the camo king and his queen. He named her Princess Whiteshirt. Kearns' briefing started with history, Corps history, 240 years of tradition. Nate listened. He wanted to add, unmarked by progress. He whispered it to himself, then checked the recruits. They were true believers, pure, cleansed, and ready for sacrifice. Such comments were not for their ears. Kearns' voice was strong, yet soothing, the kind cultivated by airline pilots, calming passengers down while describing the flames outside the window. He'd heard it before, Kearns' voice, arriving over the hell of Fallujah, calming him, steadying his hands as he dueled with the minaret sniper. Iraq was 2 years ago. The advance was stalled when he reported in. Go find Gunny Kearns, the echo screamed, 3 radios barking. It was a surreal moment, a history question from the company gunny. Bullets whistled, chipping stones, spraying dust, and skipping away. Kearns pulled him inside. The stone walls muffled the angry sounds. It was his first day. There was no welcome, just I see you're a college boy. It seemed a challenge, both intellectual and physical. All he could say was 3 years. Kearns nodded his head. Know what Churchill said about getting shot at and missed, he asked. Nate didn't know, but the distraction helped. Said it was the most exhilarating feeling on earth, Kearns said. Your experiences bear that out? I don't know, Gunny, he answered. I'll get back to you. He was in hell. The terrifying ride, the up-hummered RV, dodging tracers, 50 calibers chugging above and returning fire. Now here, bloodied Marines, radio screaming, chaos epitomized, and a crazy gunny. He had a duel to fight. He knew about duels, Stalingrad, Carlos Hathcock. There was history, sniper history, fed to him by both family and corps. It gave him maps, one official, colorful like a tour map, others dirty, hand-drawn, sketched by men who'd fled from where he was going. X marked the spot. The sniper was in the minaret. He studied the maps, playing them across his eyes like a movie. Then he stepped outside. Kearns followed. "I'm your spotter," he said. Nate nodded, focused now, the maps coming in line with the city. They moved forward. "Well," Kearns said, pivoting around, checking the rear, then facing him. "Was Churchill right?" "Maybe, Gunny," he'd answered, his back against a stone wall, Kearns behind him, the minaret visible now, rising above the smoke. "But only if exhilarating and scared shitless are the same thing." Kearns finished the history. Nate watched the recruits, 13 men, just like a regular squad, all camoed up, weighted down with web gear and helmets, M16s resting across their laps. They looked ready, but he knew they weren't. You could only teach so much. The rest they learned when they got there. That's where the Corps' gunny Kearnses came in. Nate listened as Kearns described the course. "We call it the John Wayne course," he told them, because John Wayne played a Marine in a couple of movies, because in the movies, every Marine shoots from the hip. That's what we do here. Kearns paused and pointed towards Nate. "Sergeant Forrest will lead our patrol." Nate removed his cover and went towards the bleachers, waiting for Kearns to finish. "We'll follow him," Kearns continued, "and I'll serve as your guide." Kearns was silent for a moment, pacing, then turning back to face his audience, chin in hand, like there was something he'd forgotten. "You know," he said, in his voice at its most folksy, "considering this is a live fire exercise, our casualties to date have been remarkably low." Nate watched the groups. The casual remark always caught them by surprise. They looked at each other, eyes questions, knowing Kearns was kidding, yet not quite sure. Distant rifle fire added fuel to their doubts. A few seconds passed, and Kearns laughed, and they all laughed with him, like they'd known all along. Princess Whiteshirts didn't laugh. She shook her head and frowned at Kearns. Camo King reached over and ruffled her hair. She straightened it with a head flip, gave him a big smile, and they started towards the bleachers. Nate took a deep breath, ready to make his last trip down range. "Squad 10 tut," he yelled, and 26 boots hit the deck. They were eager to begin, ready to be tested and afraid of failing. He could see it in their eyes. It wasn't combat, it was close, going into the bush against a hidden enemy. He told him what he told him all week. He who shoots first wins. React, don't think, put the first round low. A white patch slipped into his peripheral vision. She was leaning against the shed, looking back towards the bleachers where Kearns was handing out earplugs. He focused back on the recruits. If you aim low, sometimes you get a lucky ricochet, and if you don't, he'll duck and you'll have an aiming point. Nate looked toward the firing line. Kearns had his group in position, the control box in his hand. He didn't see Princess Whiteshirt, probably back on the bus. He turned back to his recruits. "Any questions?" he asked. No one spoke. "Good," he said, falling at the head of the firing line. Nate follows the course of Uro's, positioned himself behind the first recruit, Private Nash. A path cut by 1,000 boots formed the firing line. They traveled across a clearing where sandbag bunkers hid their cardboard enemies. "Lock and load," Nate ordered, as Nash slapped the magazine into his rifle and chambered a round. The clearing was a warm-up. They'd practiced there yesterday and uncovered dirt freshened by the bullets exposed to targets. Kearns hit a switch. The target rose. The lead recruit fired twice and ran to the rear of the squad. Nate studied their techniques. Overall, they were good. A couple were slow, not trusting their instincts, aiming instead of pointing. He made mental notes for later. Nash returned to his position. "Follow the trail into those woods," Nate said, pointing towards a clump of oaks that grew along the marshes of Archer's Creek. Nash moved forward towards the trees. Nate knew how he felt. It was like walking through a house of horrors. Something was going to grab you. You just didn't know when. It's the same way in combat. No warning, a killing event, the manual called it. Bullets or explosives blasting you into hell before you had a chance to say your prayers or cry out for your mother. Beneath the oaks, the trail grew wider, followed by an old logging road kept clear by the Marine boots that stalked its sandy surface. He glanced behind him, checking each rifle. Didn't like being in front of 12 weapons, but at least they were all pointing in the right direction. Kearns trailed the last recruit with Princess Whiteshirt close behind. That Camo King made her come, he thought, otherwise she'd be on the bus. Kearns had options. Nate knew he was watching Nash, making him sweat, waiting for a mistake. Nash moved forward, his head dipping, then rising, pivoting from left to right, scanning close, then far, the way he was trained. The trail curved left and dipped toward a wooden footbridge laid across a tidal creek. Nash stopped. Sweat rolled down his neck and darkened his jacket. Keeping his eyes focused, he removed his right hand from his rifle and reached for his canteen. It was quiet. Even civilians were still. A slight breeze slipped across the marsh, cloaking them in its salty vapor, masking the target swoosh as it rose from its hiding place. It seemed to strut, swaying in the grass, mocking Nash, who dropped his canteen and fumbled with his rifle. He had 4 seconds. It wasn't enough. The target fired first. Explosions tore through the air. The noise was trapped by the natural canopy. Nate charged towards Nash. "You're a dead man," he screamed, slapping Nash's rifle on safe and spinning the trembling recruit towards him. "Report your death in action." Nate stared at him, his eyes blank. Nash stared at him, his eyes blank. "Like on the booby trap course," Nate said. "Or did you forget that too?" "Sir," Nash said, his voice loud but shaky. "Private Nash reports his death in action as the direct result of his own stupidity." Nate grabbed Nash's canteen and slammed it into his chest. "Died for a drink of water." He pointed back down the trail toward the recruits. "They're dead too. Now kind of patrol just wiped out a Marine squad because you were thirsty. Can see him now, searching the bodies, jabbering among themselves. And God help any poor devil who's still alive." He stared at Nash. "You happy now, Private?" Nash's lips trembled and his eyes filled with tears. "Get to the rear, crybaby," Nate said, shoving Nash back down the trail. "I don't need you up here screwing up my Marine Corps." He followed Nash. Behind him, recruits lay sprawled along the trail. The civilians clustered around Kearns. "It's far enough," Nate said when they passed the last recruit. Nash turned to face him, but Nate pointed him towards the wood line. "Look in the bushes," he said. "That's where the bad guys are." He glanced at Kearns. He thought he detected a slight smile, but he wasn't sure. Kearns was hard to read. Not so Princess Whiteshirt. Her eyes cut through him like a laser. Jogging back to the front, he could still feel the wound. He wondered how she'd look if she saw Private Nash's bloody body lying along the trail. He wanted to ask her. Instead, he yelled back over his shoulder, "Next man up." That's it.
Thank you, John. Well, that brought our spirits up as we end the open mic. Nice writing, John. So yeah. Well, thank you, everybody. We're getting close to the 7:30 hour. So grateful and humbled by your great writing. People are waving to say goodbye. So we'll see what happens again next month. Hopefully we'll be live and in action down on the waterfront. And I wish you safe health and a beautiful evening tonight. So take good care.
Thank you, Vivian.
You're so
Thank
welcome.
you, Vivian.
Thank you, Vivian.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
That's terrific.
Thank you so much.
Great job, Brooke.
Fun.
Yes, very good.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
All right.
I don't want to go.
Bye. Bye, Emily.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi, Barb. Bye, Barb.
Bye, all from Ireland.
Good job,
Bye-bye.
John.
Ireland. Goodbye from Ireland. Come back again. Bye.